Seems to me, again, maybe as somebody who grew up outside the United States, that the great thing about American markets is that they're open, they're transparent, they're fast, they're well regulated. And that the faster they've gotten, the more technology, the more transparency, the more competition has been great for consumers, for people like me who have, and it feels like you're almost saying like that stuff is bad.
No, not saying that at all. There's a distinction that needs to be made, and it's between computerized trading and computerized scalping. And the problem is that when technology hit Wall Street figured out ways to use it for its purposes that were not in the interest of investors. A lot of what happened was very good. What we need, in a way, is the computerization is fantastic. The technology is a force for good. We just need to remove Wall Street from the process. I think the technology is sort of telling us you don't need these services that they're trying to provide you. You don't need all this trading, this unnecessary intermediation. Goldman Sachs has come out and said that the system as it's structured, the problem with it is not just that people are getting scalped, that they are, but that's not the big problem. The big problem is that the system that generates the scalping is so complicated that it is unstable. And that their worry is that the system is, the flash crashes and NASDAQ outages and all the technology failures we've seen in the markets are a result of an overly complicated system, and the complexity is there by design. Hit Wall Street figured out ways to use it for its purposes that were not in the interest of investors. A lot of what happened was very good. What we need, in a way, is the computerization is fantastic. The technology is a force for good. We just need to remove Wall Street.
Seems to me, again,
a lot of what happened was very good. What we need, in a way, is the computerization is fantastic. The technology is a force for good. We just need to remove Wall Street from the process. The technology is sort of telling us you don't need these services that they're trying to provide you. You don't need all this trading, this unnecessary intermediation. Goldman Sachs has come out and said that the system as it's structured, the problem with it is not just that people are getting scalped, that they are, but that's not the big problem. The big problem is that the system that generates the scalping is so complicated that it is unstable. And their worry is that the system is, the flash crashes and NASDAQ outages and all the technology failures we've seen in the markets are a result of an overly complicated system, and the complexity is there by design.
Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy.
It seems to me, again, maybe as somebody who grew up outside the United States, that the great thing about American markets is that they're open, they're transparent, they're fast, they're well regulated, and that the fact
Michael Lewis has got a new book out about the stock market. Oh boy, it ain't pretty. 30 minutes to talk about and how they have a monument. We're such suckers.
Global capitalism is rigged.
By whom?
By a combination of the stock exchanges, the big Wall Street banks, and high-frequency traders.
Who are the victims?
Everybody who has an investment in the stock market.
Yeah, well, that sounds fun. No. The powerful have not rigged the system in their favor. All you belly aching about income inequality. Boo-hoo. Show you progressives complaining about that, you're like the Nazis. But they literally fix the markets in their favor. Here's more from Michael Lewis.
The insiders are able to move faster than you. They're able to see your order and play it against other orders in ways you don't understand. They're able to front-run your order.
What do you mean front-run?
It means they're able to identify your desire to buy shares in Microsoft and buy them in front of you and sell them back to you at a higher price. It all happens in infinitesimally small periods of time.
No, why are we complaining about this, man? I mean, he has more money than you because he front-loaded your trade and did it before you got to. And so when he front-ran the trade, you literally paid more than you had to. I don't know why you're complaining about income inequality. Oh, poor Wall Street. They're so misunderstood. Not only is the entire Republican Party sucking up to Wall Street, Hillary Clinton got $400,000 from Goldman Sachs, and in those speeches talked about how the bankers are misunderstood. Now, Michael Lewis is one of the best writers we have in the country. He wrote Moneyball. He wrote The Big Short about the 2008 collapse and the people who made money off of that. It was a great book. It was so eye-opening. I read that book, and I was absolutely positive, and I am positive to this day, that we will have another monumental meltdown. And the next economic meltdown, we will not be able to fix. It will be so catastrophic. Because in the book, he simply explains things that are logical, incentives, disincentives. And their incentive is not to help the markets. They don't give a damn about the free market. They'll rig that market in a second. Their incentive is not ideology. Their incentive is me getting paid right this minute. Look, a lot of these guys, they don't own the company. They're executives in the companies, even if it's a bank. And even if the bank goes under, who gives a damn? The guy who caused AIG to go belly up made $600 million. Is he going to do it again? Of course he's going to do it again. Now, if he's not allowed to do it, what difference does it make? He's already got $600 million. And by the way, we had to rescue them to the tune of over $180 billion because of that guy's mistakes. But they weren't mistakes because he already made the money. He doesn't give a shit about AIG. He doesn't care about the American taxpayer. And it'll be a new guy, and he won't care about you either. He'll rig this market. He'll rig the housing market. They'll rig whatever market it takes. And eventually, of course, it's going to blow up. But that's not their problem because they already got paid. No, us progressives, just bitter. The politics of envy, they call it. Yeah, if you get to make the trade before I do, and I pay more because you rigged the trade, I'm a little envious that you robbed me of my money. Yeah, I guess that's not the right way to go. Am I angry about that? Yeah, I'm a little angry about that. As we all should be. By the way, as the Republicans love to remind us, all of our 401ks are in the market. That means that Anybody who's got a 401k, they're robbing you. They robbed you yesterday, they're going to rob you today, and they're going to rob you tomorrow. And no one is going to fix it because, as Dick Durbin, second most powerful senator on the Democrat side, said, frankly, the big banks own this place.
You are the author when it comes to Wall Street culture. There's no one else out there. But in terms of reaction, you have never gotten such a visceral reaction in such a short time. What do you make of all this?
It does. I've had one experience kind of like this, and it was when I published Moneyball. But in that case, they weren't threatening to throw old baseball scouts in jail for what they did. But the disruption to the industry that caused feels a lot like this. And the instigator, there's a character kind of who is taking a different view of the industry and has kind of investigated it one way or another. The main character of this book, Brad Katsuyama, has got a similar feel to me to Billy Beane. So I feel the reaction feels, it reminds me of that, that everybody has to have an opinion about the book right away, no matter if they read the book or not. So that's similar.
But is the opinion about the book or about the claim the market's rigged? That's a big claim.
Yeah, well, it is rigged. So it's not that big. You read the book, I don't think you can put it down and say the market's not rigged. I really don't think you. I mean, unless we can parse the word rigged.
Maybe we should.
So let me give you an analogy that I think is a very close analogy to the way the stock market's structured. It's a casino analogy. So I have a casino, and I want to start a poker game in the casino. So I get 3 card sharks, and I tell them, go sit there and start the game. Make it look like a good game's going on. There are no 4s, there are no 9s, there are no queens in the deck. Only you will know that. And we will pay some tour group operators to bring like a bunch of dumb tourists in to play with you. They won't know. You'll win. Hold on.
Tourists. David Einhorn's a dumb tourist?
Yes.
Come on now.
In this analogy, hold on. In this analogy, every investor, David Einhorn did not know. He did not understand. He understood that whenever he tried to do something in the market moved, like someone knew what he was up to. In the same way that big pension fund managers and mutual fund managers saw when they tried to execute big orders, oh my God, it's like someone knows I want to buy before I buy. But he didn't know why. He didn't understand that high-frequency traders were putting machines in exchanges to be closer to the exchange so that they could get price information 2 milliseconds before him, and so on and so forth. Can I finish my analogy?
Absolutely.
So here's the analogy. So, of course, the tourists get fleeced all the time in the poker game because they don't know that the deck is rigged, right? The poker players pay the casino a cut of what they make. The casino operators pay the tour group company money to bring in the tourists. So in this case, casino is the exchange, the poker players are the high-frequency traders, and the tour group operators are the banks and the brokers that handle the stock market orders. And I think the analogy is pretty close. So is that rigged? Is that a rigged game? I think it is a rigged game.
Well, it's rigged only in as much as rigged.
So let's use the
casino analogy.
Why are you so invested in the idea this is fair? Why are you even arguing about this? It's so clear.
Me?
Yeah, you seem to be. So why?
Actually, we've just been
No. But
asking
it's
questions.
very interesting. No, but you seem to be. You can see it's very clear that people are being front run in the market. There's plenty of evidence in the book. People making tests in the market.
Their orders are being anticipated and inferred.
Anticipated and run in front of. That's right. And why?
Well, no. There's some people. I mean, in all fairness, I don't have a stake in the proceedings here. Certainly not like you, because you're the author of the book, Michael. But there are some people.
Right.
You've probably met some of them who would say, in order to front run, you have to have a client.
Wait, I'm sorry.
In order to front run, you have to have a client. And the HFT firms don't have clients.
They buy the order flow. They pay. I mean, we're talking Main Street.
They pay to see things.
They pay to execute the orders. So they pay TD Ameritrade tens of millions of dollars a year. Schwab. They pay E-Trade. So they pay for the right to execute the orders at a delayed price. So why would you? I mean, ask that question. Why would anybody pay for the right to execute someone else's stock market order? That in itself is a little curious. I mean, I can understand why, if I'm a stock market investor, why I would pay a commission to a broker to handle my order. But why on top of that is the broker turning around and selling my order to some high-frequency trader for the right to execute it? Where's the value in that? The value in that is quite clear. It's that that order for the high-frequency trader is an opportunity to exploit. And it's an opportunity to exploit because he has advanced information about the pricing in the stock market. Is that fair?
He's also getting paid by the exchange to print, right? To print the trades.
I mean, now you're getting into a complicated discussion because the exchange pricing, sometimes you pay and sometimes you get paid. So that's almost a separate issue. It is true that the exchanges create incentives to be on one side of the trade or the other. And I think that basically when you look at it, at the bottom of this is a bit like the financial crisis. At the bottom of this is that the system is riddled with really bad incentives. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense for brokers to be owning exchanges, I think. In fact, the exchanges are for investors, not brokers, not for middlemen. When the brokers own the exchange is going to be essentially an instrument of the intermediary rather than the investor.
All right, then are the exchanges sort of like how what the rating agencies were in The Big Short? Is that what the exchanges are here? And if they weren't for profit,
Right.
Would they be a better force, a force we could trust more?
It's a similar sort of role. That analogy is probably, but yes, it occurred to me that's actually sort of the role, that they're thought to be, their role, it's a kind of utility role. You need them to be an honest broker. You need them to create a fair experience for a customer who walks onto them. And because they are for profit, they're incentivized, and because of the way the markets work, they have to meet quarterly earnings and so on and so forth. It's not a long-term view they're taking, it's a very short-term view they're taking, that they're constantly subjected to the temptation of taking money from one faction of their clientele to put the other faction in a bad place.
Would we like these HFTs more if they actually were putting money at risk, if they had positions?
Yes.
The fact that they're just taking a scrape here, is
Yes.
that why we dislike them so much?
The fact that they're sort of set up not to take market risk. It's funny.
I want you to have skin in the game. If you have skin in the game and you could lose, I like you
If
more.
you could have 4,000 trading days without a single day's loss, something's a little weird, right? I mean,
yes,
Right.
But let's rewind the clock to pre-1975 when there weren't really market makers the way there are now. There were, trading was largely an agency business. This is before Gus Levy and before the arbitrage desk at Goldman Sachs and Robert Rubin. They didn't lose any money either. You don't lose any money as an agency trader.
Oh, it's not true that they didn't lose any money when you rewind the clock. I worked on Wall Street. The Solomon Brothers, the traders would have down days and they'd have up days, and they just hoped the up days were better than the down days.
But they were putting money. They were putting money at risk,
and they were putting money at risk.
Right.
The position they were taking. I'm not saying that was pure and innocent and great either, right? But there were different problems in different days. But the role they were playing was a buffer in the market. They're playing the role that Brad Katsuyama played at RBC, that someone needs to sell 1 million shares of something, and the market isn't ready for that.
But
and
you know what?
They'll sit in the middle.
You're actually, here's one. I'll phrase it as a question instead of making a statement. Would you acknowledge that your critics perhaps have one fair point, which is that it's hard to generalize, that much of what you're talking about, much of the people whom you identify as the victims in the book are by and large institutional traders. Some of them are mutual fund managers like
So can I stop you there? Can I stop you there? I'm sorry, but in the book there's a long interview with the guy who spent years selling the order flow for TD Ameritrade. That is not.
I read it.
That's not institutional investors. That's you and me. That's mom and pop. And he says, what's the most valuable order for a high-frequency trader to exploit? It's a market order from an individual investor, because the individual investor has such a slow feed, basically.
But then
no, it's true. Now, what is true, if the order is a 100-share order, it's probably not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
That's true. But
well, a lot of retail orders are 100 shares.
But who manages the savings of most people in America? It isn't people trading 100-share lots on E-Trade or Ameritrade. It is mutual funds,
True,
it's pension
but
funds.
be careful who you defend here. Actively managed mutual funds.
Right.
We could talk about the passive ones separately,
Right.
but actively managed mutual funds, on the whole, do a terrible job of overseeing Americans' money. Right? They fail to beat the market more than 50% of the time, and they charge a fee on top of that. Here, we were going to get down to this, but let's do it now. How do you decide who to put the white hat on?
I didn't put a
Are these white hat guys?
I didn't actually put a white hat on the mutual fund industry. I hope you don't think I just did that. But it doesn't help that in addition to the ineptitude of the mutual fund managers, they have to pay this tax. It's all a cost to the ultimate investor. So I'm not an apologist for the mutual fund industry. That's not the point. The point is the people whose money they're managing, it's ultimately damaged by this, are lots of little individual investors. And so it's to say that this doesn't touch the individual investor is crazy. The second reason it's crazy, and this gets to Goldman Sachs' recent involvement, is that in order to preserve essentially a stock market system that enables this sort of activity, the level of complexity has gone through the roof. And basically the reason I write a book about this, nobody understands the stock market. This guy can walk in and describe a stock market that nobody understands, and David Einhorn listens to him and says, oh my God, this I did not know. The complexity is a source of instability. The people at Goldman Sachs I talked to who have thrown their weight behind this exchange said the main reason they did it was that the outages at the exchanges, the flash crash, whatever it is, the various technical mishaps that seem to punctuate the life of the stock market these days. They see it all as symptomatic of a much bigger problem. There's going to be a massive flash crash times 10, and Goldman's going to get blamed. So we got to get out of this before that happens. So that's not good for the individual investor either.
But is this still material to the individual investors? Because today, when I go to execute a stock, I definitely feel like, man, how did that get jacked right in front of my face every time? I do feel that way. But 15 years ago when I did a trade, I was paying significantly more to do it with a specialist because of what the fees were.
So you got to make a distinction here.
So it's a different problem in different days. Is it really worse today than it was when specialists were on the floor?
I never said that.
Then has the system always been rigged?
Yes. In different ways. In different ways.
No,
Hold on. In different ways. The problems then were different from the problems today. And you're not making a distinction that I think is really important to make. Yes, technology has brought incredible benefits to the individual investor. It's really good that trading is computerized. I'm not against computerized trading. It's that it does not have to be computerized scalping going on with computerized trading. The two are not, they're not inextricably linked. They're separate things. What really should happen is that you get you get all the benefits of the computerized trading without someone running in front of you when you trade. That's what should happen. And there's no reason that can't happen. There's no reason that can't happen. And I think part of, like, this is a larger discussion about, like, the state of Wall Street. But what's happened here is that technology has basically eliminated a role Wall Street used to play. You used to need a human being to bring together a buyer and a seller. You couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't. Now you hit your button on your computer and your stock market order go into a box with everybody else's stock market orders.
And you don't feel good about that?
That's good.
That's
is
what I'm
good.
saying.
No,
That's
that's
a good
good.
thing.
The
Yeah,
problem
I don't want
is
some guy jacking me.
but some guy is still jacking you, and that's the problem. Is you've got traders who take all this unnecessary financial intermediation happening. Wall Street's found a way to insert itself in the stock market where it's no longer necessary, and there's all this trading happening between intermediaries and you and me that just don't need to happen.
A bulldozer of a book.
Playing an ever-growing role. So he's telling us that we are on the road not just to a highly unequal society, but to a society of an oligarchy, a society of inherited wealth, patrimonial capitalism, and he does it with enormous amount of documentation, and it's a revelation. I mean, even for someone like me, it's a revelation.
I was going to ask, what does Paul Krugman have to learn from this book?
Even the title, the first word in the title, capital. We stopped talking about capital. Even people like me stopped talking about capital because we thought it was all about human capital. We thought it was all about earnings. We thought that the wealthy were people who one way or another found a way to make a lot of money.
Right.
And we knew that wasn't always true. We knew that in the Gilded Age or in the Belle Epoque in Europe, which he prefers to talk about, that high incomes were mostly the result of having lots and lots of assets. But we sort of said, well, that's not the way things work anymore. And he says, oh yeah? It turns out that you're wrong, that it's true that right now a lot of high incomes in America are people who didn't start out all that rich, but we're rapidly moving towards a state where inherited wealth dominates. I didn't know that. I should have known it. I should have thought about it, but I didn't. And so then here comes this book with, I mean, it's beautiful. It happens to be analytically beautiful, if that makes any sense at all to the viewers.
As you know, I'm no economist, but I found this book, as I said in the opening, just very readable, and suddenly there'd be this moment of epiphany.
Yeah, it's a real eureka book. You suddenly say, oh, the world is not the way I saw it. The world, in fact, has moved on a long way in the last 25 years and not in a direction you're going to like, because we are seeing not only great disparities in income and wealth, but we're seeing them get entrenched. We're seeing them become inequalities that will be transferred across generations. We are becoming very much the kind of society we imagine we're nothing like.
Here's Piketty's main point. Capital tends to produce real returns of 4 to 5%, and economic growth is much slower. What's the practical result of that?
What that means is that if you have a large fortune, suppose that our family has a large fortune, the inheritors of that large fortune can live very, very well. They can live extraordinary standard of living and still put a large fraction of the income from that fortune aside, and the fortune will grow faster than the economy. So the big dynastic fortunes tend to take an ever-growing share of total national wealth. So when you have a situation where the returns on capital are pretty high and the growth rate of the economy is not that high, you have a situation in which not only can people live well off inherited wealth, but they can actually pass on to the next generation even more, an even higher share. So it's all, in his terms, R, the rate of return on capital, and G, the rate of growth of the economy. And when you have a high R, low G economy, which is what we now have, then you're talking about a situation in which dynasties come increasingly to dominate the top of the economic spectrum, and a tiny fraction of the population ends up very dominant.
What's the realistic impact of this on working people?
There's a direct impact, which is that part of income is always going to go to labor, although that seems to be a diminishing fraction, but the part that comes from capital is going to be in the hands of a very few people. The other thing, which I think is critically important, and he talks about more towards the end of the book, is the political economy. That when you have, what Teddy Roosevelt could have told you and did, that when you have a few people who are so wealthy that they can effectively buy the political system is going to tend to serve their interests. And that is going to reinforce this shift of income and wealth towards the top.
Do you agree with him that we are drifting toward oligarchy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't think that's even, I don't see that there's any question of it. If you look at the, certainly if you look at what we know already, and we're learning more, we know already about the concentration of income, of wealth, you can see that it is growing. You can see that, and you can actually see, I spent a little while just sort of going through the Forbes 400 list. And what you find is already, there's an awful lot of inherited wealth in there. It's no longer a list of self-made men. And of the self-made men, a lot of them are pretty elderly. And those fortunes are going to be passed on to next generation. So no, the drift towards oligarchy is very visible, both casual observation and in the numbers.
I was taken with something you wrote the other day. You said that, in your opinion, the real problem is not capital accumulation per se, as much as it is, quote, remarkably high compensation and incomes. Now, how does that differ from what you were just saying about wealth that passes to the next generation?
So right now, high incomes are still primarily coming from people who've made a lot of money, typically as corporate executives. That has been the story. So the big expansion of inequality in the United States since the 1970s has so far been driven by high salaries, high bonuses, and so on. That's where we are now. But our image of the top is really a quarter century old. It is about the way things were when these great fortunes were just getting started, when we were just seeing the explosion of inequality. But we're well along the way towards one in which it is, in fact, an older thing, where people accumulate capital, pass it on to their heirs, and you get these dynastic wealth. So right now, and this is where Piketty has interesting things to say, but not this compelling vision about why America is so unequal right now. But looking forward, he's telling us that the story is already changing, and it's going to change more. So we are going to probably, unless something gets better, we're going to look back nostalgically on the early 21st century, when you could still at least have the pretense that the wealthy actually earned their wealth. And by the year 2030, it'll all be inherited.
And at the same time, we can't even manage to pay workers a minimum wage of $10.10.
Yeah, and what's amazing, I thought actually one of the most depressing things, although enlightening in his book, is he talks about France in the Belle Epoque, the years before World War I, which was ideologically as much a society committed to equality in principle as we are today, but in practice was totally dominated by very wealthy families, where it was impossible to even raise the possibility of seriously taxing great wealth, where it was very hard to do anything to improve the conditions of ordinary workers. And it shows you how that can happen, how you can have a society where even though the ideology is democratic, even though we claim that all men are equal, in practice, not a chance.
Isn't that what's happening now in this country?
Exactly. That's the point. And what's funny is at that time, Americans used to say, oh, we should never allow ourselves to become like old Europe, and in fact, we have.
But we have had the Rockefellers, we've had the Carnegies, we've had the Pews, we've had big dynasties that transferred their wealth from one generation to another.
Yes. Before World War I, we had our dynastic families, but they were not nearly as dominant as they were in Europe, largely not because we didn't have high returns on capital, but because we were growing so fast. We were an immigrant nation, a fast-growing nation, so they hadn't been able to establish a lock. And then after that, we had a long period of high taxation of large estates, of high taxation of capital income. But now we're on our way back. Now we're on our way back towards something that looks much more like that kind of hierarchical society.
Piketty makes the point that the very size of inherited fortunes today is so great that it practically makes them invisible. Quote, wealth is so concentrated that a large segment of society is virtually unaware of its existence.
Sure. If you have conversations with people who are not in this business, who are not economists, they have no idea what real wealth means in America. They think that having $1 million makes you wealthy. They think that, or having a salary of several $100,000 makes you wealthy. And while it's certainly true, that's a vastly privileged condition compared with most people, the sheer size of those big fortunes is so far outside our normal experience that it does become invisible. You're never going to meet these people. You're never going to have any sense of what it is that they control. And most people, I think, have no idea just how, I'm trying to, how far the commanding heights are from you and me.
You remind us often, and you did so just the other day, that the United States has a much more unequal distribution of income than other advanced countries, and that much of this difference comes from government action, such as?
If you look at, well, look at European countries, just about all of them, they don't actually necessarily have higher taxes on very high incomes. That's not so much the factor. And they have higher taxes overall, which are used to pay for a lot of programs of aid. So you have universal health care, and we have sort of are stumbling our way towards something like that now. But they have a lot of income support for people with low incomes. They have lots of support for young parents. They have lots of, basically a lot of redistribution, which is a dirty word in US politics, but in fact is essential to having a decent society. So that to be, the average American is richer than the average person in France, although that's mostly because we work longer hours, but to be in the bottom of the bottom fifth in France is a far, far better thing than to be in the bottom fifth in the United States because of these government policies. It's not that wages are especially high at the bottom in France, a little bit higher than in the United States because they have a high minimum wage, but mostly you have government programs which make an enormous difference. The level of inequality of market income, what people actually make, is not that different among advanced countries. The level of inequality of disposable income, once the government has gotten through taxing and spending, is much, much higher in the US than it is in most other advanced countries, and that's because of the government.
Why is, as you said, redistribution such a noxious word in our political system?
I think mostly it's just because there's a very effective apparatus that of TV and print media and think tanks and so on who hammer against any suggestion of redistribution. It just, they've managed to convince a lot of people that it is somehow un-American, which actually, if you look at American history, that's not at all true, but it's just been pushed very hard. I think also in the United States, look, we have to admit it, that race is always lurking under almost everything in American life. And redistribution in the minds of a lot of people means taking money from people like me and giving it to people who don't look like me. And I think that is a big difference between us and Europe.
You do know that conservatives are regularly, consistently saying that inequality doesn't matter, that if the very rich were less rich, it wouldn't really make a difference to people out there working for a living.
But of course, what Europeans do, which is to tax the rich and use it to provide benefits to people lower down the scale.
Michael Lewis has got a new book out about the stock market. Oh boy, it ain't pretty. He's going to go on 60 Minutes to talk about it. It's called Flash Boys because it's about flash trading and how they have a monumental advantage over the regular trader, meaning you and me who go out there in the stock market and file our trades. We're such suckers. Listen.
What's the headline here?
Stock market's rigged. The United States stock market, the most iconic market in global capitalism, is rigged.
By whom?
By a combination of the stock exchanges, the big Wall Street banks, and high-frequency traders.
Who are the victims?
Everybody who has an investment in the stock market.
Yeah, well, that sounds fun. No. The powerful have not rigged the system in their favor. All you belly aching about income inequality. Boo-hoo. Show you progressives complaining about that, you're like the Nazis. But they literally fix the markets in their favor. Here's more from Michael Lewis.
The insiders are able to move faster than you. They're able to see your order and play it against other orders in ways you don't understand. They're able to front-run your order.
What do you mean front-run?
It means they're able to identify your desire to buy shares in Microsoft and buy them in front of you and sell them back to you at a higher price. It all happens in infinitesimally small periods of time.
No, why are we complaining about this, man? I mean, he has more money than you because he front-loaded your trade and did it before you got to. And so when he front-ran the trade, you literally paid more than you had to. I don't know why you're complaining about income inequality. Oh, poor Wall Street. They're so misunderstood. Not only is the entire Republican Party sucking up to Wall Street, Hillary Clinton got $400,000 from Goldman Sachs, and in those speeches talked about how the bankers are misunderstood. Now, Michael Lewis is one of the best writers we have in the country. He wrote Moneyball. He wrote The Big Short about the 2008 collapse and the people who made money off of that. It was a great book. It was so eye-opening. I read that book, and I was absolutely positive, and I am positive to this day, that we will have another monumental meltdown. And the next economic meltdown, we will not be able to fix. It will be so catastrophic. Because in the book, he simply explains things that are logical, incentives, disincentives. And their incentive is not to help the markets. They don't give a damn about the free market. They'll rig that market in a second. Their incentive is not ideology. Their incentive is me getting paid right this minute. Even, look, a lot of these guys, they don't own the company. They're executives in the companies, even if it's a bank. And even if the bank goes under, who gives a damn? The guy who caused AIG to go belly up made $600 million. Is he going to do it again? Of course he's going to do it again. Now, if he's not allowed to do it, what difference does it make? He's already got $600 million. And by the way, we had to rescue them to the tune of over $180 billion because of that guy's mistakes. But they weren't mistakes because he already made the money. He doesn't give a shit about AIG. He doesn't care about the American taxpayer. And it'll be a new guy, and he won't care about you either. He'll rig this market. He'll rig the housing market. They'll rig whatever market it takes. And eventually, of course, it's going to blow up. But that's not their problem because they already got paid. No, us progressives, just bitter. The politics of envy, they call it. Yeah, if you get to make the trade before I do, and I pay more because you rigged the trade, I'm a little envious that you robbed me of my money. Yeah, I guess that's not the right way to go. Am I angry about that? Yeah, I'm a little angry about that. As we all should be. By the way, as the Republicans love to remind us, all of our 401ks are in the market. That means that anybody who's got a 401k, they're robbing you. They robbed you yesterday, they're going to rob you today, and they're going to rob you tomorrow. And no one is going to fix it because, as Dick Durbin, second most powerful senator on the Democrat side, said, frankly, the big banks own this place.
That the faster they've gotten, the more technology, the more transparency, the more competition has been great for consumers, for people like me who have, it feels like you're almost saying like that stuff is bad.
No, not saying that at all. There's a distinction that needs to be made, and it's between computerized trading and computerized scalping. And the problem is that when technology hit Wall Street figured out ways to use it for its purposes that were not in the interest of investors. A lot of what happened was very good. What we need, in a way, is the computerization is fantastic. The technology is a force for good. We just need to remove Wall Street from the process. I mean, I think the technology is sort of telling us you don't need these services that they're trying to provide you. You don't need all this trading, this unnecessary intermediation. Goldman Sachs has come out and said that. The system, as it's structured, the problem with it is not just that people are getting scalped, that they are, but that's not the big problem. The big problem is that the system that generates the scalping is so complicated that it is unstable. And that their worry is that the system is, the flash crashes and NASDAQ outages and all the technology failures we've seen in the markets are a result of an overly complicated system, and the complexity is there by design.
Alright guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about a really intriguing stock. a company that actually kind of
We begin with a bombshell report that could change the way Wall Street does business. 60 Minutes revealed last night how a few stock market insiders are making billions in high-frequency trading. It is based on information that reaches them a fraction of a second ahead of everyone.
If it wasn't complicated, it wouldn't be allowed to happen. The complexity disguises what is happening. If it's so complicated you can't understand it, then you can't question.
And this is all being done by computers.
All being done by computers. It's too fast to be done by humans. Humans have been completely removed from the marketplace.
Fast is the operative word. Machines with secret programs are now trading stocks in tiny fractions of a second, way too fast to be seen or recorded on a stock ticker or computer screen, faster than the market itself. High-frequency traders, big Wall Street firms, and stock exchanges have spent billions to gain an advantage of a millisecond for themselves and their customers, just to get a peek at stock market prices and orders, a flash before everyone else, along with the opportunity to act on it.
The insiders are able to move faster than you. They're able to see your order and play it against other orders in ways you don't understand.
This quiet suburban Main Street is about an hour from Manhattan, home of the New York Stock Exchange and some of the biggest names in banking. But don't let looks fool you. A lot of the trading these days happens in places like this. On the second floor of this building is a high-frequency trading firm, one of the few that will talk to the press. For a company dealing in the fast-paced world of high-speed trading, where millions of shares change hands in seconds, the offices of TradeWorks in Red Bank, New Jersey are surprisingly laid back, a place where a handful of young programmers work on complex trading strategies. Firms like TradeWorks have been villainized for contributing to the recent wild volatility on Wall Street.
This is an actual trade that we participate in, which is a moneymaker for us.
But founder Minaj Narang says nothing could be further from the truth.
And the thing about high-frequency traders in particular is that their buying interest in any fixed time period generally is exactly identical to their selling interest.
So you're doing both?
Meaning we buy as many shares as we sell in relatively short time periods. So it's fairly easy to, just as a thought experiment, see that high-frequency traders cannot impact the prices of stocks.
Some of the people saying this, though, are sort of long-time Wall Street people,
Sure.
who presumably know a thing or two about this. Why do you think that the attention keeps coming back to high-frequency trading, if what you say is true?
What you see in the financial industry is that lots and lots of firms, the asset management industry in particular, multi-trillion-dollar industry, is under pressure because managers habitually underperform their benchmarks.
So a bit of sour grapes.
It's sour grapes because, look, it's the oldest trick on Wall Street to look for a scapegoat when you can't explain your own performance, right? It's always the
It's the moment investors around the world wait for, the 9:30 opening of the U.S. markets. Inside Citadel's Chicago headquarters, it's eerily quiet, even though this firm trades more stocks every day than the New York Stock Exchange.
Now, 2 minutes to the open, so we're about to get going here.
Is there any equivalent of a bell that we're going to hear or see?
I have a world clock up there. That's about it. We're just going to hear the air conditioning above us.
The equivalent of the NYSE's opening bell is just this, Millions of orders that have been waiting all night for the markets to open are rapidly filled by Citadel's computer programs.
How do the books look, guys? So we're pumping through a lot of volume right now. You can see how quiet it is. The phone's not even ringing. Clients are happy. You know, if there was ever an issue, obviously you would spot it first and the phones would light up. We have executed 21 million shares already.
Wow, and we are not even 3 minutes in. Meet the new Wall Street traders. Here, computers like these do the heavy lifting. Citadel's employees with PhDs in applied math, physics, and engineering build and refine the computer programs. And the people who manage the trading floor here mostly look for computer glitches and talk to customers.
They are not making trading decisions. Those are all made by the computers. So they're not making any decisions with respect to whether an order should be filled, what price it should be filled. That's all done in an automated way.
When you click send from your TD Ameritrade account, there's a good chance that Citadel's computers see it. Then they either fill your order or send it out to the Byzantine network of 13 exchanges and 20 plus dark pools to execute it.
Dark pool is really, it's an unfortunate terminology that the industry created. And really, a dark pool is nothing more than a crossing engine. Now, it's called dark because the whole market doesn't know what you want to buy or sell.
We've seen these market dislocations. I mean, is it fair to think of it almost as a technological arms race?
Yeah, you know, I think it's no different than any other industry. 100 years ago, there were literally hundreds of car companies across the U.S., and there was a lot of smaller companies. Over time, manufacturing became very automated. You had factories, and you had the cost of building a factory went up. We are a technology leader. We make a big investment in technology to stay cutting edge, and yes, we're constantly investing in our systems to stay at the forefront of technology.
The bot will short shares and get its order filled microseconds. Hundreds of similar exchanges around the world that work to raise capital for productive corporations that will design and build the products of the future. Classic imagery of loud, bombastic traders in bright uniforms tends to be the images that come to mind when we think of these kinds of exchanges. But the reality today is that most of the action on Wall Street looks like this. The age of automated trading machines is upon us. Most trading today is happening to, from, and between computers that all have very clever programs to consistently and reliably invest into the stock market better than a human could. These computer programs come in all shapes and sizes, but the most controversial amongst all of these are high-frequency trading algorithms. These machines trade hundreds of thousands of times a second, making tiny little slivers of profit over a very tiny sliver of time. These machines have been very profitable for a lot of firms that have properly employed this technology. But it has to be asked, what are the lasting consequences of these types of systems? We have effectively handed control over the most important markets in all of our economies around the world to machines that are basically just playing robot wars with each other. In this video, we will look at the many weird and wonderful ways that algorithms use lightning speed to get an edge over the average participant in these markets, and then assess the many weird and wonderful ways this can all go wrong. There is an old legend about the Battle of Waterloo, that a Nathan Mayer Rothschild of the Rothschild banking family had scouts at the Battle of Waterloo. As soon as the battle was over and the British were decidedly victorious, this scout raced back to London to be the first to deliver the news to Nathan Rothschild himself. Upon learning of the British victory, Nathan knew that British government war bonds would spike in value. So, in a cunning attempt to take advantage of this, he very openly and very publicly started selling off his British government war bonds. This sent the market into panic, and the British government bonds plummeted in the few hours before Sir Wellington could arrive to deliver the true story. In secret, Nathan Rothschild ordered his agents to buy up these war bonds for pennies on the pound, and by the time Wellington did arrive to announce the kingdom's glorious victory over Napoleon's forces, Nathan had bought up thousands of these government war bonds on the cheap and reaped the massive rewards of the ensuing price spike. Now, this story is actually not true. It's a fun little piece of storytelling, but most historians today realise that Lord Bathurst was the first person to deliver the news to London, and no such securities manipulation actually took place. What it does show, though, is the power of speed in information. Had Nathan actually had the fastest horse and ship to deliver the news, it is very likely that such a scheme could have actually been pulled off. The same is true today. Whoever gets access to information first has a huge advantage in speculative markets. The logical extent of this is getting information from insiders in a company before it is released to the general public. If you had a friend who worked in the accounting department of Goldman Sachs, let's say, and they told you that their quarterly earnings report were going to show huge profits, you could then go and buy up that stock, wait for the report to be released and massively increase the demand for that stock, and then sell at a higher price. Unfortunately, this whole scheme has a name. It's called insider trading, and it is super illegal. Like, even rich white people go to jail for it levels of illegal. What low latency news bots attempt to do is effectively the same thing, but just in a slightly more legal way. Say Bloomberg releases a report detailing huge fraudulent activity within a company. If that kind of report gets released, it tends to create a mass sell-off of the stock. All of these people selling increases the supply of the stock in the open market and hence reduces the price. The average human could take 5 or so minutes to read the average Bloomberg article, digest the information, and then decide on how to trade stocks based on that information. Low latency news bots do it in a fraction of a second. Low latency, or high frequency, trading bots will scan articles, business reports, and even tweets to detect positive and negative words. These algorithms assign a positive or negative value to words like fraud, growth, losses, layoffs, profits, sue, and scan these articles for the overall weighting of goodness or badness of the news, and then either buy or short the stock almost instantly before regular readers have had a chance to react. If an article is written about, say, Johnson & Johnson and is filled with words like cancer, allegation, class action, recall, cover-up, and plaintiffs, an automated system is going to basically say, oh yeah, that's bad, instantly. Short the stock, and sure enough, 2 seconds after this breaking news is released, boom. The market has already been adjusted due to a wave of high-frequency trading bots crashing the market. The example of Johnson & Johnson's talcum powder scandal was one of the more obvious instances of these kinds of bots. But realistically, they work day in and day out ingesting huge piles of data and very quickly making snap decisions on if this is good or bad before anybody else has had the chance to react. What makes this all the more interesting, though, is that these types of low-latency market bots are not limited to just typical financial markets. There are low-latency news bots operating in sporting markets around the world today as well. Something like the news of an injury of a star football player can massively reduce the odds of a sports team winning an upcoming game. These types of news bots can even operate in these markets to very quickly put bets on the opposing side in these instances to profit off the price change caused by the news hitting the mainstream. These news bots were the first kind of high-frequency trading algorithms to be released on the world, but from this, they have grown and adapted into a range of weird and wonderful algorithms. High-frequency trading turned quickly from reactionary systems making predictable trades into complex machines that ingest hundreds of points of data in real time, run regression analyses on that data, and then make microsecond trades to make thousands of tiny little profitable exchanges throughout the day. These data points go from simple stuff like order volume, current price, and price of similar securities to far more obscure data points that are, for the most part, closely guarded secrets of the firms that trade these algorithms. This has done a few things. Firstly, it has led to a massive arms race in speed. High-frequency trading firms were, up until recently, increasing the value of land around the New York Stock Exchange Center so that their fiber optic cables would be closer to the exchange server. The speed of light through 100 meters of glass fiber cable could have meant the difference between your firm or a competitor firm getting the trades in to make the profit. Today, these firms just pay to keep their servers in the basement of the New York Stock Exchange, and every firm gets exactly the same length of fiber optic cable connecting it to the node itself to make sure that all of the servers are operating within a billionth of a second of one another. So, you know, pretty good ping overall. All of these algorithms are still, for the most part, a reactionary algorithm. They are simply looking at data, interpreting it very quickly, and acting on it before anybody else has had the chance to do the same. But they get even weirder from that. Some algorithms have been designed to basically prey on other algorithms, detecting the data points that they look for, feeding them false data points like bogus bids or low-value, high-volume trades to get them to react in such a way as to offer a security for less than it should have otherwise been traded for, and then selling it back to the regular market at a markup all within a millionth of a second. The basic techniques of these aggressive predator-style bots are spoofing, putting orders into the market to give a false impression of demand and then cancelling them a billionth of a second later before they are filled, and quote stuffing, which is basically very quickly throwing up a whole lot of crappy low-value buy or sell offers really quickly. They won't get filled, but they will slow down other high-frequency trading algorithms that now have to analyze all of these new crappy orders while your algorithm can ignore them and gain a significant speed advantage. These aggressive techniques have since been made illegal in most markets around the world, as it has been determined that they effectively amount to stock manipulation, which is again, super illegal. But it doesn't mean that high-frequency trading firms aren't experimenting with new and similarly aggressive techniques. Because if you can be sure of something, it is that laws will struggle to keep up with technology, especially if there is money to be made. Otherwise, regular reactionary high-frequency trading algorithms remain at large throughout most markets today, which begs a pretty big question. What does this actually mean for the foundational purpose of most of these markets? All of these kinds of high-frequency trading techniques are all very fun to explore and certainly have been very profitable for the firms that have utilised them well. But what does it mean for the greater economy? At the end of the day, stock exchanges are basically the markets for companies to trade their stock with the general population in order to raise capital to build factories or develop technologies or research life-saving medication or whatever. What happens when these markets, a cornerstone of modern world finance, get turned into the most boring episode of BattleBots ever? Well, the first major drawback are flash crashes. Effectively, high-frequency trading algorithms are just computer scripts, a set of instructions: if X and Y equals Z, do this. Now, of course, modern algorithms are extremely complex, but it doesn't mean that they can't fall into the same kinds of problems that any other computer program does, most notably, endless recursions. Let's say one high-frequency trading bot is programmed to short shares for Citibank every time that there is a new sell order for Citibank. This is called front-running, and it is a super common strategy. Basically, the bot will short shares and get its order filled microseconds before a larger sell order comes along to the market and pushes the whole market price down. The bot then buys out its short position and turns a tidy little profit. The problem arises when another high-frequency trading bot decides that this front-running business is a good idea. Some average trader will sell their Citibank shares, and bot 1 will see that order and front-run it, shorting Citibank. Bot 2 does the same. And then suddenly bot 1 sees that there is another sell order and shorts the shares again. Bot 2 sees the sell order that bot 1 placed and shorts the stock billions of times over in a fraction of a second. This is obviously an extremely simple example of a recursion loop, and in reality, most decent trading algorithms have checks in place to stop something as simple as this happening. But it is impossible to create a system that will react perfectly to everything all of the time, and you can ask anybody that works in development or software. Recursions happen all the damn time. Only in this case, you aren't Control-Alt-deleting your Python script, you are Control-Alt-deleting the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. These flash crashes have hit many markets all over the world as high-frequency trading becomes more prominent, and it was kind of a big red flag that said to investors, hey, you know this securities market here? The market that is supposed to be, secure? Yeah, well, it's actually just a playground for software nerds who got bored of writing PyAuto GUI RuneScape scripts. I have said it over and over again on this channel, that confidence is the basis of any market or economy, and it is difficult to have confidence in a market that could literally fall apart in a billionth of a second. In response to this, many exchanges around the world have put strict limitations on these kinds of trading patterns. But when there's a will, there is a way, and if there's a dollar to be made, it will be made. This is Robinhood, a stock trading platform that services billions of dollars worth of trade in any given day, the darling of Wall Street bets, and it seemingly does all of this for a far lower price than traditional brokers. How do they do this? Well, they operate as what is called a dark pool. Most of the fun stuff that high-frequency traders try to pull is not really feasible on major exchanges anymore, due to regulation, minimum latency restrictions, or straight-up competition. But a platform like Robinhood is big enough that it kind of exists in its own little ecosystem. Typical stockbrokers will pass along their clients' orders to the primary market. In this case, let's say the New York Stock Exchange. But Robinhood has enough clients that it can just keep the trades internal, passing the cash and securities from one client to the other without the need to go through the main market. This is known as a dark pool, which is just a scary way of saying a stock market that forms separate to the primary stock market. A market like Robinhood, though, does not have the same kind of regulations around high-frequency trading. So, for a price, they will let high-frequency trading firms plug their software into the back end of the exchange and front-run and news-react and spoof to their heart's content. A market filled with average non-institutional investors with high liquidity is fertile ground for high-frequency trading firms, and they will pay big premium to facilitators like Robinhood, which means that firms like Robinhood don't need to charge their regular clients as much, if anything at all, which is yet again another example of a solid business saying, if you are not paying for a product you are using, chances are you are the product. Now, a huge disclaimer here is that this isn't to say that there is no money to be made investing through Robinhood. Just keep in mind that every time you do, chances are you are making a high-frequency trading firm somewhere out there just a little bit richer. High-frequency trading is the modern incarnation of the race to be the first to the market. It is a battle that has been going on for as long as economics has been studied. Is it healthy? Well, no, probably not. It does severely throw the stability of major world markets into question. But as always, it's likely to be around until regulation has a chance to make sense of this new reality and catch up with innovation. Hi guys, thanks for watching my latest video. We will be live streaming the Q&A session for this video half an hour after it goes up. If you want to ask questions, I would encourage joining that YouTube stream or joining our Discord server. Otherwise, if you did enjoy, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks guys, bye.
Super-quick computers and advanced mathematic formulas have largely taken over trading on the financial markets from human beings. Algorithms, which seem to have a life of their own. Algorithms secretly lie waiting for the moment that your Apple share or your pension money gets on the market. The only ones who understand this system in any way are its architects, the algorithm developers. Chaim Bodek is one such algo developer. After finding some strange wrongdoings, he sets out on a personal crusade against this elusive system. It's a step that goes directly against the unwritten Wall Street code of silence and secrecy. This is what's in store for you.
There's kind of a rule, never blame other people, never blame the market, never blame the other trader. It's always you. Your code, your code is wrong.
If you're on Wall Street, you just assume you're being ripped off unless you're the one doing the ripping off.
You know, on Wall Street, we talked about the culture of secrecy. You just don't go to the SEC.
This is Backlight. Welcome to the twisted nooks and crannies of our financial markets.
This is all about just a 1 cent move in the stock. That's all it is. How a single tick, how a price changes, that's when the game is played. And when that one tick happens, the world is divided into winners and losers.
The machinery behind our financial markets, consisting of mathematical models, data centers, and miles of fiber optic cables, is disguised by technological complexity and secrecy. The builders of this financial system are a new breed of Wall Street employees, quants, mathematicians and physicists who are responsible for a technological revolution. Chaim Bodek is a quant. He specialized in artificial intelligence and worked for Hull Trading and Goldman Sachs. He knows the system from the inside. He helped build it.
One day I got a call that said, hey, you've got to get in touch with this individual. His name is Chaim Bodek. He's got some revolutionary information about high-frequency trading, which is one of the subjects that we cover at the Battle of the Quants. And I said, sure, I'll give him a call and see what's going on. Having Haim Bodek speak was like opening Pandora's box. And he machine gunned his way through the series of slides with information that, frankly, I heard back from people in the audience that said they were astounded.
Nobody ever talked about order types until Haim came around. I mean, it wasn't even part of the conversation. And when I, heard what Haim was talking about, he's looking at order types that, if used properly, guarantee a profit.
There were definitely people in the audience that were aware of this and cowering in their seats saying, who is this guy and why would he allow this information to be out and potentially ruin our fantastic, opportunity for generating revenue in the marketplace.
There were actually quite a lot of Russians, and one guy came up to me and he says, I know what you're doing. And I'm behind you, and if you need anybody and you need any help, I've got some friends. And I'm like, am I at a quant conference? And these are just other people's reactions, right? I'm thinking to myself, look, it's a bunch of geeks who did this. I don't think I'm going against like the mob or something like that.
In 2011, Bodek's own high-frequency trading company, Trading Machines, went under. According to Bodek, the reason was a wrong order type, or the way in which he told the exchange to execute his order.
Well, this isn't the setup I used to have, I'll tell you that much. But, it'll do. When we launched Trading Machines, we knew which machines we were faster than. We knew specifically which firms we were faster than and specifically which firms were faster than us because we traded against these firms.
So you were as fast as the others that were fast?
No, we were faster.
You can take a time frame of 1 second, and it looks as if it's a lifetime of trading between these algos that you never even see.
It was Bart C. Kellerman who invited Haim Bodek to tell his story at the Battle of the Quants, a recurring event where quants discuss high-frequency trading, amongst other things.
When you buy a stock, you buy it at a price, and then for the next person to buy it, they have to pay more. So that margin was the advantage that a lot of these HFT organizations could take advantage of. Now, it's minuscule in terms of the amounts, but when you do it millions and millions of times, it creates tremendous revenue over a period of time. 10 years ago, these quants would write a model, put it out into the market, and basically go to the beach and relax. And they'd come back at the end of the day and they'd count their money.
Bodek wrote an algorithm for trading machines that would generate a guaranteed income, a money machine that weathered the financial meltdown of 2008. But then, from one day to the next, the algorithm stopped working.
I started seeing behavior on certain exchanges that just was odd. You watch this algorithm and it's cannot trade, even though it's moving the price and it's trying to trade. You're like, why can't it trade? No one will trade with it. I'm going back in time and forward saying what code changed. We have 1 million lines of code. The pattern I'm seeing is completely inconsistent with every single bug I've ever seen in that area. There's kind of a rule, never blame other people, never blame the market, never blame the other trader. It's always you. Your code is wrong. It took 12 months. 12 months from that date until it was explained to me, and it was explained to me by a person. That's why probably why I didn't discover this for so long, as I sat there trying to figure out what we did wrong. went to a holiday event hosted by that exchange, and I say, I'm sorry, I have a bug.
So to who were you talking?
To a business development guy whose job is to encourage volume growth at the exchange. That's his entire job. He explained to me that my order was being systematically disadvantaged because I was using the wrong order type. So I'm not going to actually blame stock market asymmetry for what finally killed us, but I will say it did waste 1 year of my life chasing something that I could have learned over drinks.
What was your first reaction?
I was humiliated. I was, you know, how could I not know this?
Bodek thought he understood the plumbing of our automated financial markets, but foundered on the social codes within the high-frequency trading world. Certain traders had found a way to have their orders jump the queue. Bodek started his career with a company that pioneered automated trading. In Chicago, at Hull Trading.
We had a very strict process by which we qualified people to work for us. So it was pretty tough to get a job at Hull Trading.
Blair Hull is a trading legend. A mathematics genius, Hull made his first fortune at the blackjack tables in Las Vegas. With that money, he founded Hull Trading. With his quants, he was at the forefront of the automation of financial markets.
In 1977, when I first went down to the Pacific Stock Exchange, I realized that all the paper that was on the floor did not need to exist. And I figured a good programmer could automate this whole process within a year or two. My vision for the direction of where things were going was right on. My timing was off by about 30 years.
Nobody who joined Hull Trading was looking for that Wall Street job. They were joining because they wanted to be surrounded by really intelligent people and, you know, working on amazing problems. And that it was not seen as a Wall Street job. I mean, it would never have applied to an investment bank. It would never even have crossed my mind, right? I'm more of like the Google world, not the Goldman Sachs world, even though I did okay there.
Our search for the origins of the technological revolution that has taken place in financial markets over the past few decades leads us to possibly an even greater trading legend, Thomas Petterfy.
We have everything here. We have the American flag and nature and so from 50 minutes from New York on a good day, it's good.
At age 21, Petterfy fled communist Hungary. He was one of the first to see the enormous possibilities of automated trading. With his company, Interactive Brokers, his net worth is an estimated $6 billion. He receives us in his office.
I have the first handheld iPad type of computer that I made up in 1983. That the people used on the floor. So this was connected to a battery, and here you could display options, you know, various strikes and expiration dates. And here were the bids, and here were the offers, and that way our people on the floor could see what our market was. And via these touch-sensitive
It is a touchscreen.
points, it's a touchscreen, yeah.
And we're talking what year?
1983.
And what were other people?
Other people used their minds.
So did you patented this
No, I don't believe in patents. I believe that patents make other people disincentivized in coming up with new things.
So other people were sort of copying you?
Sure, other people always copied me, but that's okay. That moves the world forward.
You could have a computer on the floor in the early 80s, but you could not have it directly connected to a price feed. I had my computer in the office, and I would go up the elevator, get my computer run, come back down, execute trades, and walk around the floor, and then I'd go back upstairs, do a computer run, and come back down. So I couldn't actually have real price feeds coming in. In fact, the first time that we had option quotes on the floor, in order to input the S&P 500 price, we had what we called a human ticker. And that's the person that looked at the screen and put the price up or down to make sure it was the exact same price. These are the rules that the exchanges had to make sure that people did not move ahead with automation.
So we devised a way to splice into the wire that was that the keyboard was connected to, and we put in keystrokes via computer, so we are much quicker without having to use the keyboard, having to have people sitting there using the keyboard. So this NASDAQ official came and he saw this and he said, well, you can do that. I said, why not? He says, well, because look at the rule. It says that all orders have to be input by the keyboard. So we decided to build a overlay over the keyboard that had pistons, rubber fingers that would go up and down and type, right? And the only problem was it was very loud. So it was really typing like and so the next time the fellow who comes in again and he hears this crazy noise, and the orders flying in and out, so he didn't know what to do. And he just looked for a while, and then he went away. And then we never heard of him again.
In the 90s, the Wall Street establishment realized it's falling behind in the technological revolution. Just before the turn of the century, Blair Hull sells his company, including his employees, to investment bank Goldman Sachs for $500 million.
Having Hull being acquired for me was like getting in the back door of Goldman, and we kind of joked about it at Hull often. We were all given personality tests, and the personality type I got was basically your mad scientist personality. Okay. Is there a goal here?
We need some more vinegar, Mom.
So maybe it was about a period of 9 months where people were concerned that I was, working at a bank. I spent a lot of my life and my childhood surrounded by physicists at physics labs.
What did your father say when you went to
I don't think he was that thrilled about Goldman, actually. People in that world had, were exceptional. I met, I just remember these parties, little get-togethers I go to, and I'm like 8 years old, and this guy won the Nobel Prize, and this guy won the Nobel Prize. Come here, son, shake both their hands. These people believed, and keep in mind, some of them created nuclear bombs, right? These people believed that science was going to make a better world, and that the way to make a better world was to understand and to create and to discover. And I'd say the people in that world would look at the world of high finance and say, if you're that smart, why would you do that? Making more money than the other guy, is that really what genius is about?
The collective brainpower of the mathematics and physics geniuses that have chosen to work in finance has led to 70% of trading now being automated and 50% taking place within milliseconds. what's called high-frequency trading, or HFT.
High-frequency trading has nothing to do with economics. It has everything to do with understanding how networks operate, how they fail, how to make them fail in your advantage, how to make them fail in your advantage without being detected.
Eric Hunsader's company Nanex sells financial data. Out of curiosity, he researches abnormal patterns in financial data flows. He knows what's going on in the financial markets to within a millisecond.
So Eric, where are you taking us?
I'm taking you to the CME facility in Aurora, Illinois.
But the CME is downtown Chicago.
Downtown Chicago as much as the NYSE is downtown New York, right? So it's really all about the data centers. It's where the machines are. I believe that building up here on the left is the CME's data. Yes, it is.
It looks huge.
It is huge. This is where billions of dollars is transacted every day in the futures markets. When you send orders to buy and sell, this is where it ends up.
But what are these poles, these huge antennas?
This is how they get it to New York fast. So if you were to go climb that tower, and I wouldn't advise it, but if you were and you looked straight down where that dish was pointing, and you had a telescope, you would be able to spot the next one.
But I thought that they
Right here
used
at Hertz.
glass fiber to do so. Glass fiber cable.
This is more direct. So speed of light is all about distance. And actually, light travels a little bit faster in the air than it does in fiber. You know, one nanosecond faster, one clock cycle faster is all you need to be. You just need to be faster than the other people. This is probably a big thorn in their side, this relay station here. There's a number of things that can cause loss of signal, like the Fresnel effect, or the atmospheric conditions can change, or some child's balloon could go up at the wrong time.
Bodek's company, Trading Machines, also made money with its ultra-fast trading.
If it was really an equal match, and I had lost fair and square, I would have beaten myself up, I would have nursed my wounds, I would have actually been quite humble about things. I knew, through my own self-criticism, what I had screwed up and what I hadn't.
Haim Bodek's HFT company, Trading Machines, closes down for good in January 2011.
I'd heard of Trading Machines, but I didn't know anything about Haim, so I thought, okay, you know, I might as well meet him. So we set up a meeting soon after. This was a few months after Trading Machines had basically shut down.
It was no coincidence that Bodek started talking to Scott Patterson, a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. Patterson has followed high-frequency trading closely for years. Without knowing about each other, Bodek and Patterson had both been looking into the conflict of interest between the HFT industry and the exchanges for some time.
We did meet at Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan, and I remember distinctly at one point near the end of our conversation, Haim said something about there being something in the market that's rigged, and he thought that it was in part responsible for what happened to Trading Machines.
But I actually had a full organizational chart with every single head count, one of the top HFTs in my bag, and other things that were part of my business intelligence.
And he had done a lot of work on it, but it was very vague.
So you gave him this pile of documents?
Well, I let him look over my shoulder.
I said, you have to tell me what this is. Because so many times in my career, I've talked to people who have said they know about something that's potentially illegal or something rigged somewhere or another. But it's just, I never really get them to go beyond just to something that's really vague. And I remember the first real interview that I had with him at his house, and we sat down, I think it was around 10:30 in the morning, and proceeded to talk for 7 hours straight and didn't eat anything. I think I had a glass of water. And, I just sat back and listened to Haim and took notes for so long that my computer ran out of power, and I had to start taking notes by hand because it all came out.
I'm going to try to explain metaphorically it's really a circus. So I'm going to make it a little bit of a comedy here about what happens. But sadly, this is pretty much the case. We're going to have a concert hall. Let's say it's Metallica. I mean, I like metal music, so Metallica playing at this concert hall. The ticket counter opens at 6 p.m., so I'm gonna go and stand in line. But after a while, other people come in after me, and I'm no longer at the end of the line. There are these scalpers. Well, they're in line with me also, okay? I can see them because they're all wearing the same t-shirt. They also have a very, very close relationship with the exchange, with the venue. And what is that relationship? Maybe one of them brings a significant amount, of volume to this. And what does that mean? He buys a lot of tickets. Of course, he sells those tickets to customers here, but one guy brings a lot of volume. Another guy, one of these scalpers, actually owns 10% of the venue. Okay? A third guy, he doesn't have a lot of volume. He's not big on this venue, but he's big on another venue, and he's got a board seat on this in this venue. So there's a very, very close relationship between these scalpers and the venue. Scalping Metallica tickets. When the ticket counter opens, I'm going to equate that to the moment when in the stock market a price can change. And 6 p.m. on the dot, this is what I'm gonna witness. Every single one of these guys is literally going to immediately, in 1 picosecond, they teleport, okay? They are all here ahead of me. How did that happen? I asked some of the other people, and they say, oh, they're really fast. I'm like, no, they teleport. That guy was behind me. How does he get ahead of me? There really isn't any difference between an order type and being the guy who wears the t-shirt. You just put a little code on your order, and you just say, hey, don't treat me badly, please.
So how did you get in contact with Haim Bode?
I met him at Blair Hall's house. He invited me over to have dinner, and that's when I first met him.
So what do you think of him as a person?
He's great. He understands code, and so we were talking shop within 5 minutes.
When he told you his story, was it something that you also already had noticed in the data feeds that you were getting in?
No. There's no way. We don't know who executes on a quote unless we don't know who's behind each one. Whereas he would know who's behind his, for example.
And he knows on what exchange he's...
He would see well, I should have been the one in the first... I should have been the next one to be filled, but he wasn't. And there's no way to see that.
No, once I was told, it was so easy to figure out the rest and fill in all the holes. But if you don't actually know that there are scalpers out there who are gonna use special order types to queue jump you, and then they're gonna buy all the tickets, and then they're gonna sell them back to the guys in the line. If you don't know that that is a significant amount of the trading that occurs on an exchange, and if you don't know the mechanisms by which it occurs, it's, you believe what you see on the price feed.
So who set this up?
It's not a business guy who designed these features. Only a few people out there who have really have the technical competency to design these features. Less than 10.
10?
Less than 10, way less.
And you know them all?
Not personally. Well, I know many of them personally. I don't know all of them personally. I'm very familiar with their work.
What were the algorithms that you were building at Citadel, and what was their function?
I can't get into that. I'm terrified of Citadel lawyers. So.
Dave Lauer was a trader and analyst at top HFT firms Alston and Citadel. He was asked to testify as an expert at a Senate committee hearing about high-frequency trading. Like Bodek, he is one of the few insiders who has come forward with his experiences.
So at the top, you have high-frequency trading and proprietary trading desks in the big banks. That's the main. That's the party that everyone else is trying to serve or be a part of. Underneath them, you have the exchanges, and the exchange's entire business model now revolves around volume. So the exchanges work hard to court HFT to attract them to their venues and therefore to attract the volume. And the brokers are the ones routing orders to the exchanges, and they're making money off commissions from their buy-siders. So at the bottom is the buy side. The buy side are the pension funds and the mutual funds. They're the investors. They're the ones who are actually there because they think that a company has good prospects or good fundamentals.
And so the amount of money that's being made by all these layers, that is what it costs
Effectively, yeah, that's the cost to trade.
When a mutual fund or a pension fund is putting a large order in the market, how is that order being called in jargon among traders?
It's the dumb money. It's the low-hanging fruit. That's dinner. It's the bread and butter. It's all these algos do is try to detect when that's happening. It's all about figuring out when the institution is buying and selling.
They're just waiting for my pension money to hit the...
Yeah, and they're just gonna skim a little bit off the top.
Death by 1,000 cuts. You'll just get picked apart as that order travels through the system. You want to be on the other side of that trade. That's where you're going to make money. It's just how it's been for a long time, so I think most people are just used to it and they don't question it. And they probably just assume they're being ripped off. That's sort of, if you're on Wall Street, you would just assume you're being ripped off unless you're the one doing the ripping off.
Basically, the people whose money is in the large pension funds and investment accounts, they do not understand what is happening. If they understood that it is their money, that basically the banks are taking from them and report it as profits, then they would do something about it. But the problem is that it's too complicated for people to understand.
It was kind of a comedy for me when the order type issue erupted, and it was clear how many people did not know that these exchanges offered specialized order type. You're talking about probably 90% of finance doesn't know how the US stock market works.
The exchanges were originally owned by the brokers, and they would bring new companies to market in the exchange in the hopes that the brokers would then be able to market those new company shares to their customers and get a fee for doing that marketing. And those companies would grow, and they'd be successful, and everybody would be happy. What's changed, though, in the whole scheme of things, is these exchanges have now been taken over to a large extent by investors, private equity companies, not necessarily interested in growing small companies and going public, but instead just generating a monthly return. High frequency trading provides a fee for every trade made. So the more successful and more frequently somebody trades, the fees generated from that went back into creating a profitable exchange.
These high-frequency firms, they thrive on complexity because if, of everyone, they understand it the best. They understand, because that's their business, is to study market structure, to understand inefficiencies in market structure and exploit those.
Exchanges have changed, from places where companies attracted investors to data centers where wars are waged between algorithms that trade with each other at the speed of light. A hidden world where, during a sudden implosion, the infamous 2010 flash crash, $862 billion evaporated within minutes on American stock markets.
Wow! Almost 1,000 points! We call this a capitulation! They're gonna probably halt trading! We can't stop the selling!
The flash crash was an event for me that it was a defining event. There was no way for me to ignore that. I was on the high-frequency trading floor. Things were going pretty normal. I mean, as normal as it can be, the market was down 2.5%. There was riots on TV in Greece, and every time they showed the Greek riots, the market would drop a little. And I remember looking up, and just like every trading floor, CNBC is on, and I saw that the Dow Jones had dropped another 100 points. I said, okay, whatever, kept working. A minute later, I look up, and it had dropped another 100 points. I got up off my desk, and I walk over to the futures traders, and they're just scrambling all over the place. They don't know what's going on. They had huge amounts of orders in the market. Everything's going crazy. Market started dropping another 100 points, and the CEO of the firm comes running out onto the floor, and he's just screaming, pull everything, pull everything. So they're just hitting buttons, turning everything off. And so we're all sort of huddled around these two screens. And the one screen is, we're looking at the book. So it's the futures market. You have a set of people that are willing to buy and a set of people that are willing to sell. This is the market. And as we're watching the screen, the orders, they start drifting, like orders are being canceled. And then they start drifting more. And then they start to go off the screen. And then they were gone. There was nothing. There was no market. For moments, for seconds, there was no market. And we're all just sitting there, and you're staring into oblivion. You're like, you have no idea what is about to happen. I was thinking that something terrible has just happened. Something indescribably horrible just happened. The market was gone.
I picked up my phone and called my trading desk, and I said, what's going on, the guys? And they said, well, we don't know. So I said, what are you doing? Are you widening out your markets? And they said, yes, yes, yes. I said, okay, well, that's all we can do. And let's wait until it stops. Yeah. I mean, you get a nauseous feeling. You're worried. You don't know, is the world coming to an end or what's happening, right?
Even 9/11 didn't have that kind of impact. So you just, things started to return to normal, and the market recovered, and it bounced back, and everyone just kept going. And for me, I don't know, it just changed me. Looking back on that day, I lost faith in capitalism, or at least what we had built to be capitalism, and I didn't trust it anymore. I lost trust. My friend has a PhD in climate science from Harvard, who was working there. There was a PhD in bioinformatics sitting next to me, a semiconductor designer on the other side. Sitting behind me was a master's in math from MIT. And these people are taking their huge brain power and devoting it to making pennies in a high-frequency trading system. And I couldn't justify that anymore, because they should have been doing, they should have been curing cancer or global warming, and here they are, they're making a fortune. And were we making the markets a better place? Were we increasing efficiency or stability? I mean, that day showed me that we weren't.
bucks, guys. $9. $1 to $9. $9.
It supported the VWAP and everything, and it just popped. And it just went through its other speed lines. So
This is bad. This is when
it's
you
gonna
know.
go back up there, I think.
Yeah, this is when you know you stop for the day. Because this entire day, we've done all this, right? And this algo has been pretty much max pain down $200. It's up, 471 right now. How many contracts?
37
Contract size is kind of good size, but I mean,
It rebalances.
No, I'm saying if it's down direction.
Yeah, she will.
You're dealing with the puts, right?
She will, but this option won't.
Pure question, right?
That's where trader guys make more money.
Oh, the market's closed. Hey! I just bought this Facebook and now I got an overnight. What an idiot.
Yep.
What a herb. All right, so I'm overnight 500 contracts.
What do you think you were doing?
On Facebook.
5 minutes left.
Dude, I thought it was like 3 o'clock, man.
So essentially, we run a hedge fund out of here. We pretty much manage a community of traders. We bootstrapped it from nothing. I'm from Los Angeles, and our head trader is from Boston. We decided to come out here and try to make a killing for ourselves. This is Brian Weiner. He is a former head trader over at Trading Machines, which was pretty much run by this guy right here, Chaim Bodek, aka the Algo Arms Dealer. Okay, that's what we call him here. And he educates us on microstructure, and we use it to try to become better traders.
What I do is I get a kick out of watching these guys beat up the machines, which they can do, which is fascinating to me given what I've seen in this business.
Together with his friends, Peter Zhang rented a loft in downtown Manhattan to start a hedge fund. Recently, they started working with Chaim Bodek to develop an algorithm that simulates the gutsy behavior of a day trader.
Charlie lives here, this was originally, I think it was supposed to be a study. He's now turned it into a rainforest jungle, and he lives pretty well, Obviously, he's got his own fan, he's got his own bathroom, it's cool. Anand, our main trader, he's got the most gigantic room ever. But this is the master bedroom, though, and obviously there's everything here. It's a really big room. He pays obviously the most rent here. So most of the time, like after trading and after being really worn out, we will just kind of crash on the couch, and it's just like, because we're always in each other's faces, this is kind of like where we hang out. It's also where I sleep. This is my blanket right there. Yep. And we should probably clean it up a little bit.
Where does Chaim sleep when he's here?
When Chaim's here, he sleeps right there.
And then it goes down, yeah, it sucks.
No, but that's the point. And I think...
And you guys would be greedy about deltas.
We actually reached out to him through Twitter, and we talked to him on the phone, and he seemed like a genius on the phone. And when he came in, first time, we just said, you should just come over. Come see our operation, you're gonna love it. Let's do some business, maybe. And so he comes over, and he walks in just like full speed in a suit that doesn't even fit him. And I'm like, Chaim, what's going on, man? And Anand has this list. He's got this list, like, questions to ask Chaim Bodek, And I'm like, okay, well, we'll do that. And immediately we notice Chaim does this thing. It's called getting Chaimed. He goes on. And he's just the unleashing of the genius, pretty much.
He's certainly respected. He's very experienced. He's got a very impressive background, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he was a high-frequency trader, and his systems failed. So I think that plays a large part in how he's seen by the industry.
You would see things like he's not credible and this